Support for your public radio station comes from our members and from GreenSpark Solar, serving the greater Rochester and Finger Lakes regions for over 20 years. GreenSpark Solar is dedicated to helping people power their homes and businesses with local solar power and battery storage backup. More at greensparksolar.com.
From WXXI News, this is Connections. I'm Evan Dawson. Well, our connection this hour will be made this month when Democratic primary voters make their choices for Rochester City Council. 15 people on this year's primary ballot with 5 at-large seats open. The official primary day is set for June 24th. And of course, will be followed by a general election in November. But in Rochester, as in many places, primaries are pretty decisive. We always want to make sure we interview everyone on a ballot, primary or general, and that's what we're doing. We've invited the candidates on the primary ballot to join us on this program so you can get to know them and ask them your questions about qualifications and priorities for office. This is the third of 5 conversations with the candidates for Rochester City Council. In each, we speak with 3 candidates at a time. I'd like to welcome our guests, and as always, we introduce them in order in which they are listed on the Monroe County Board of Elections candidate list. Victor Sanchez, candidate for Rochester City Council. You can learn more at votevictorsanchez.com and on Instagram at VictorSanchez4Rock, the number 4Rock. Welcome. Thank you for being here.
Thank you for having me.
Welcome to Kelly Cheatle, candidate for Rochester City Council. Online at voteforkelly.com. That's the word FOR, voteforkelly.com. On Instagram at Kelly Cheatle, on Facebook at Kelly Cheatle. Welcome back to the program. Thanks for being here.
Good to be here.
And Louis Aponte is with us, a candidate for Rochester City Council. On the socials, Instagram, Facebook, Louis Aponte for City Council. Nice to have you back here. Thanks for being here.
Thank you, sir.
We always ask our guests if they want to tell you a little bit about themselves, a little bit about who you are, and why you've decided that this is a seat you want to pursue. And I'm going to start with Victor. Go ahead, Victor.
Yeah, thank you for having me, Evan. First, I want to say thank you for hosting this show. It's very important to let us speak to the voters, and it's an important part of our democracy. As mentioned, my name is Victor Sanchez. I'm running for City Council, and I'm a proud Rochester transplant. I moved here to attend RIT, where I graduated with a degree in civil engineering technology and decided to set roots in Rochester. I'm running for City Council because I love the city. I love this community. I made a very deliberate choice to make Rochester my home and have been working ever since to improve the quality of life of our community and our residents. And one of the key things that pushed me into running this year is representation. I'm a LGBTQ, I'm a Mexican immigrant, and having that representation in all levels of government is really important to me, especially now with everything that we're seeing in the national level and the attacks that's coming down to the communities that I'm a part of, is one of the key things that pushed me into running for office. And I also bring a lot of expertise in advocacy in all levels of different social issues, as well as a professional background in engineering and dealing with high multi-million-dollar projects.
Thank you for being here. Kelly Cheatle, the floor is yours.
All right. Hi, everybody. My name is Kelly Cheatle. I'm an artist and a small business owner. I'm a community organizer and a legislative aide for the East District. I know how critical it is to work together to make things happen. And I believe that our elected representatives have both the opportunity and the obligation to repair the harm of past policies, to protect what matters, and to prepare our communities for what now looks like a very uncertain future. So I'm running because I believe I bring hands-on experience, creative problem solving, and a deep commitment to people-first leadership, because that's what this moment is calling for. I'm a Rochesterian by choice. I grew up in Rhode Island but came to RIT, fellow Tiger. There we go. And to get my degree in design. My husband and I live in the Park Avenue neighborhood with 3 generations under one roof. Our business, Aragami, was launched at the Hungerford nearly 2 decades ago and is now at Main on State down the street on High Falls. As the artistic director of Aragami, I've designed large-scale public art projects that brought together people from around the world. Some of you might remember the Balloon Adventure projects that we did that brought 40,000 people to our downtown at the Sibley Building. As a community organizer, I've worked behind the scenes, crafting strategy, messaging, and education that helped to propel everyday people to push for real change, like stopping the Business Improvement District. I'm running because I love this city and I love the people in it, but I've seen too many decisions happening without us at the table, without everyday folks, without renters, without working families. And I'm tired of seeing our voices get sidelined by big developers and insiders who call the shots. So we'll probably talk more about the bid, but Last March, we packed City Council with over 150 community members, and we won some key victories. But I know that there's strength in numbers and that when we show up, we win. But I see the same power players waiting in the sidelines to see, who ends up on City Council, because that bid is still waiting in the background. And so we need to make sure that there are people who are on that on City Council who are going to fight for us.
Louis Aponte. By the way, Kelly, thank you for being here as well. Louis, thank you for being here.
It's my pleasure. My pleasure.
The floor is yours.
Thank you. The question is, why are we running? I think it's time to bring back the voice of the community. As you know, Nevin, I've been involved in the community for over 2 decades. I've been president of Josana Neighborhood Association since 2007. I've been a community volunteer. I've worked with programs to help Rock Against Gun Violence. I'm a board member there as well, where I sit in the advocacy committee with Miguel Melendez to take and try to curb what's going on in our community. A lot of people say that they've been out in the community, they're working in the community. I haven't seen them. Okay, so and I go to a lot of meetings and I'm out there, and to me, I'm the knuckle dragger. I'm not the guy that wants to see his name in lights. I just want to get the work done. Mm-hmm. And born and raised off of Clinton Avenue. And you guys shouted out RIT, MCC, and FLCC. So, that's the way I'm going to go. But the quality of life issues are important, and they're forgotten. The city has created pastoral organizations that have taken away the voices of the community in the neighborhoods. And, it's really bad when people are claiming to represent an area that doesn't even exist anymore. Mm. So I think that I'm willing to work with anyone, no matter who wins. I hope I'm one of the people that wins, but I'm willing to work with anyone, but I'm also going to be transparent. I'm not going to take and hide issues. I'm not going to hide where people's sentiments are. It's about the city and the people that live in it. As a grandfather now, I got to think about my grandchildren that are entering the school district now, that are entering the community. It's just bad when the people feel unsafe. I believe in the Second Amendment. I believe in support for that. But I said, I'm going to be 58 years old this year. And 2 years ago, I went and got my gun permit. After 50-something years, and I've always lived in the city. I've always worked in EMS in the city for 38 years. And now I found the reason that I need to have a gun at home for safety. I've never had to do that. But now I do. So I think the culture needs to change. But people that live in the poorer neighborhoods believe people that have come from there and understand it. A lot of people that didn't grow up in some of these poor neighborhoods are trying to claim them as they know what's going on. They really don't, because if you're scared to go out and throw the garbage out after dark, that's a problem.
So let me start there on the issue of understanding what is needed to alleviate poverty in the city. Mm-hmm. I don't know anybody who's running who doesn't agree that poverty
mm-hmm.
continues to be,
mm-hmm.
Frankly, a moral stain on the community. But when you say that you feel like you have real life experience that's going to help you with this,
mm-hmm.
what are you going to do on council?
I think on council, number one, we have to listen to the people who live in the community. I mean, it's one thing to say that you do business in a community, but you're not living in that community. So when you're able to lay your head down, whether you're sleeping on Flower Street, off of Clinton Avenue, or off of Jefferson Avenue, or Genesee Street, or Lyle Avenue, let me tell you, there's a problem there. And for people to say, hey, we got to bring and listen to the big businesses and not listen to the people that live there, that's a problem. Pastoral organizations are receiving tons of money, and they say that they represent the neighborhood. But very few people from the neighborhood are at these meetings and they feel disenfranchised, because they're like, no matter what we say, they do what they want anyway. And I think that's what has pushed people away from being engaged in what's happening in the community.
Kelly, what can council do regarding poverty?
Excuse me. Obviously, this is an issue that has been part of our community for decades, if not centuries at this point. And what we need to do is we need to consider what got us here in the first place. So we need to understand that there are certain neighborhoods that have been not only not invested in, but disinvested in. There are, again, I mentioned in the intro, these power players that are making decisions. We don't have, right now, I'm sorry, I'm trying to center my thought on how do we engage the community the way that Luis was speaking. What's happening is that people are being treated like obstacles and not partners. Our city government is making decisions for us and not with us. People are not being included in the process. So when a policy is being moved forward, it's only being moved forward with the voices that are in the room, and we're not getting those neighborhood voices in the room. So, when somebody, our neighborhoods know what they need. So we need to facilitate making that happen. So opportunities like, guaranteed basic income would provide resources to people to decide what they need to do for their own family. They don't have to go and wait in line and apply for a certain thing that might help them in one particular area. They can have the autonomy to decide where their needs are, where they can be met. They can have room for healthy risk. The difference between someone who is able to be an entrepreneur and someone who isn't is their ability to take a chance on something. If you don't have room to take a chance, you're not going to, because you're risking your life and your livelihood. So we need to make that opportunity possible for everybody.
Okay, and we're going to come back to GBI in a moment too. Victor, you want to describe your thoughts on what council can do regarding poverty?
Yeah, I mean, poverty is a hard nut to crack. Definitely, I agree with what Luis and Kelly were saying about engaging the community, make sure that decisions are being made with community input and community in mind. I also think that we need to have a more strategic plan in place as to how to tackle these challenges. It's not one silver bullet to tackle poverty. It includes, having affordable housing, having the investment in communities, as Kelly mentioned, having the key resources that people need: food, shelter, water, access to medication and to banks right within their own neighborhood. We've seen often kind of these jobs come into our community and go off into Henrietta, and trying to draw people in from the city without car or transportation access. So there's not this real systematic conversations that are taking place within our community that say, hey, if we're going to open this call center, we need to open it in an area that's going to have the people to have those jobs, or have RTS come into the conversation early enough so that there's a bus line wherever this job is actually going to take place. And that's the type of work that I really want to see between council and between other sectors of Monroe County, really having those strategic conversations in play.
Kelly mentioned GBI, guaranteed basic income. Do you, and first of all, in general, would you support, if you're on council, some form of, I would say, permanent or extended, not just a one-shot or a pilot program, but an extended GBI?
I would. I would want to see. We would need to figure out how to pay for it, but I would definitely be interested in exploring that option and seeing how we can make that happen.
Okay. And do you have a sense for how many people in the city should be on GBI right now, or how you set parameters there? I
think how we setting parameters, I would start with, who are the most the lower income folks in our community, especially those that are with school age children. Mm-hmm. So looking at the RCSD data. And starting with those families in first place. I don't have a number in mind. I would need a lot more research and understanding of really the cost. Okay. Now,
Kelly Cheatle mentioned supporting GBI. Do you have a sense for the kind of parameters and the outlines of it, who ends up with GBI and who does not in the city?
I think it's a question of first making the choice. Like, where there's a will, there's a way. Getting into specific policy details as to who would be included and who wouldn't. I know Mary Lupien is running for mayor, and she suggested applying that to families with children in the Rochester City School District having access, and that's, a pretty good way to kind of loop in a group of folks to get included. So I'd be open to working with my council colleagues to finding the best parameters to help the most people who are in the most need. So I don't think it's about specifics. It's about recognizing the need and then meeting the need in the moment.
Okay, and then paying for it, where do you want to draw funding from?
Again, this is about balancing the opportunities and the funds that we have in front of us. Got to look at our city budget holistically. Where is the need? Where do we have things that are like vestigial that we're not necessarily still using, but they're just there out of habit? And how do we make the most with what we've got? I mean, we're looking at, potential cuts from the federal government. We're looking at even cuts in the way that we can serve our community. We have to be flexible, but we have to center ourselves in what the needs are in our community and what do we have that we can use to meet them.
Louis Aponte, GBI, would you support it on council?
I would 100% support it. And I also feel that in order to figure out what happens, we have to go into the community and figure out what their barriers are. Barriers for different families due to neighborhoods, how many family members are in a home. I don't think it should be a one and done. I think it's something we have to plan because it affects everyone. We have to be able to let people have a living wage so they could feed their families, so they could pay their rents. We have to do rent control. We have to figure out what's going on there that's affecting the families. Families are hurting really, really bad. But, some people just want to see their name in lights. They want to have a plate at that front desk in city council. But they're not going and seeing where some of these families are suffering from. And there's families that are working 1, 2, 3 jobs, whatever it may be, and still can't pay the rent. So what do? We have to support them, but we have to find a way of figuring out not only the city, where does the county sit in this? Where does our state delegation sit in this? Where are they at? We have to come together and do it.
Where do you see the city spending money right now that might seem either wasteful or not necessary that you might redirect toward a GBI?
I think there's things that need more money versus taken away. But I think that we have to figure out, how do we take care of our parks better? Do we share that with the county? Do we share how we're taking care of our lawns, how we're taking care of garbage, how we're taking care of all these things, potholes? Is there a way that we could share that cost? Something, we have to get strategic, and we have to understand that this isn't the city of Rochester 30 years ago, where you could complain that the abandoned house next door, the lawn is too high, and the city's going to come out within 24, 48 hours. Now, city-owned lots take 3 weeks to a month to cut the lawn. So to me, we have to get strategic. I think we're just saying, oh, well, it is what it is. I'm not saying that people don't care. They do care. But they're not trying to figure out how to do it better.
All right, on the subject of housing.
Okay.
Louis, you get to start here.
Okay.
If you're on council, what do you want to see continue? What needs to change when it comes to housing in this city?
I think, right now we have over 60% of the city is rental property. Mm-hmm. And home ownership, we have to give people, because there are people that are working and then they're living in rat-infested, roach-infested homes, and they're paying $1,200 and $1,300 a month in rent when they could pay $900 a month in a mortgage. And the problem with housing is that there's not enough of it. We keep on building buildings to take and, because we're going to put as many people as we can in a small area. But, the most prideful thing to me ever was the day I sat with my attorney at the bank and they handed me over those keys to my first home. That is the most powerful thing in the world. And we have to give people hope, because who's giving people hope in the city? The county. So people that are working are saying, I'm not going to stay in the city. I'm going to move out to the county because there's more homes out there. There's more opportunity for homes, the businesses, the safety, the security. So to me, housing has to come from home ownership to support people to stay in the city, and quality of housing. We can't build houses for $500,000 and sell them for $100,000. And not everyone wants to live on top of each other. Not everyone wants to, even hear the feet of the neighbor's kids running up and down the stairs, at 2 or 3 a.m. So, we have to be smart with housing, and we have to create it, and we have to make it available to everyone. Not just to some people. We filled half of the inner loop. And I couldn't even I can't afford to live in one of those apartments. And I think I make a pretty decent living, but I can't afford to live there. So who do they build it for? Who are we redlining? We have to have a real conversation about gentrification and redlining. We have to admit that is what's happening. We can't just take and close our eyes and act like it's not, because it is happening.
Kelly Cheatle on housing.
Well, so housing impacts everything. And it's a complicated issue because it impacts so many areas of our lives. So we're going to need multiple different solutions for the different needs for different people. So that means everything from emergency shelter all the way up to, home repair grants for people that have been living in their homes forever. But city policy has to serve people and not just real estate investors. So, we have to do things on council like banning portfolio sales. So for those of you who don't know what that is, that would be, an investor has 10 properties. They're going to sell all those 10 properties in one shot. I don't know about you, but it's hard enough to afford a single home. How is a regular, everyday person supposed to be able to afford 10? That doesn't work. So by blocking just that one structure, we can open up competitive buying opportunities for Rochesterians. Now, obviously, we have to make sure that they have resources to be able to pay for them, but that's just one step. And so it's going to take a whole lot of steps to build back to what should be a human right.
On your website, you advocate helping longtime residents, especially our elders, make the repairs and adaptations they need to stay safely in their homes.
Yes.
How?
Aging in place is a huge... So we live in a multi-generational home. I have my in-laws living with me downstairs. A lot of our housing stock is very old, and it's not designed for universal accessibility. And, Luis, you were talking about, that not everybody wants to live with somebody on top of them. Mm-hmm. The opportunity for these accessory dwelling units to gently add density to neighborhoods by, either extending an existing property, like adding an in-law apartment, or I think they're called the granny sheds, affectionately. But I would love the opportunity if down the road, my kids wanted to come back. An empty, well, we're not quite an empty nest yet, but if they wanted to live in the house, and we created an opportunity for me to age in place where we had an accessible ramp, or maybe we didn't even need an accessible ramp because it was at grade. There are opportunities to use what we've got to make it able for people to be able to live. I want to be able to have that opportunity that we have to care for each other in our own space. I get home from a busy day of campaigning, Nana's got chicken soup for me waiting. And also, I can make sure that she gets to the grocery store. So it's natural built-in supports. Because right now, we're heading into a care crisis. We've got the housing crisis. On the horizon is a care crisis. We don't have enough nurses. We don't have... Yeah, Luis is nodding his head. But, we need to have these natural supports in place. And how much more natural can it be than to have somebody in your home who actually cares about you be able to live there with you?
So accessory dwelling units is a part of that.
Is one opportunity.
Yeah.
I think we have to look at every opportunity that's in front of us as to whether or not it's going to improve or worsen equity and solutions in our community.
Victor, same question on housing.
Yeah, so I completely agree that housing is going to take multiple steps, a lot of different solutions. We can't have one thing solve everything when it comes to housing. So continuing to build the housing that we have, but also being mindful about the fact that if we're subsidizing, some of the housing that is going up now, in 15 years, that could be sold at market rate. So that subsidy is gone. So coming up with ideas like working with community land trusts that cap the sale of the property at a certain percentage or a certain amount that's going to keep that housing affordable long term is something that has to be in the mix as part of our housing solution, as well as improving our current stock. We have a lot of great houses that just need to be remodeled and fixed, and it's going to be a lot cheaper than building something new. So that also has to be part of the solution. And as well as looking at housing holistically. So going down to even just shelter, like what we're doing at Peace Village, where we're putting shelter for unhoused population. that has wraparound services for them that then can help them move into the next stage, which could be a rental unit, which also has wraparound services, and eventually working their way up to home ownership. I think having that comprehensive approach of how do we move someone from being unhoused to home ownership is the direction that we need to look at solving this issue.
Lewis was critical of, to my ear, it heard like the buy the block program. $500,000 to build a house, selling it for $100,000 is the way you put it. Which a couple of the mayoral candidates who are not the incumbent have been critical of this administration for the buy the block program. And in general, it remains, if you are buying a house, if you are looking to buy a house in the city of Rochester, but also in this region, in the Rochester region, this is the hardest market in the country by many measures to be a buyer. And that's because there's no inventory.
Correct.
In general, if you're in a red state or a red governed city, it's easier to build housing. Why do you think, what is going on, do you think, that makes it so hard to build housing right here, Victor?
Yeah, so I think a lot of it is there's some policies in place. So getting the permits for construction, that could be loosened up to be able to make it a little bit more feasible to be able to, I'm in the construction industry, so I'm constantly dealing with what the permitting process and how long that takes. So there's that. There's also the labor, which, I think we need to be able to pay people fairly and adequately. So I'm fully supportive of that. I have, labor endorsements. So I definitely want to make sure that we're being fair when it comes to pay and labor. But I think it's just, again, having a whole strategic plan in place. So if we're going to have parcels and it takes forever for someone to even just purchase a parcel that's going to be developed, that's going to just prolong the process. And the longer we wait, the more things are going to get expensive. So being able to work with like the land bank that's part of the city and transferring those properties over to organizations that are able to fix them up and develop them, that could, solve a lot of the issues.
Okay. Kelly Cheatle, it's not easy to build right now in many blue cities, and Rochester is one of them. Why?
Well, Trump's tariffs didn't help anybody.
But this was true before the
Oh, it
tariffs.
was true before, but why add fuel to the fire? I think, again, so many of these issues can be solved with just a quick stroke of the pen, but also those strokes of the pen can make things a little bit easier. In South Bend, Indiana, they have housing plans for, designs that have already gotten through a lot of these processes and have been approved by the city. And the plans are there for you to use. So the cost of, implementing a new build is lowered because you're not necessarily hiring an architect or somebody each time. The plan is there, the plan's approved, you'll obviously have to do site inspections, et cetera, but you're reducing the barriers to entry. Part of the issue is also access to resources. So like Lewis was mentioning about raising the minimum wage, the minimum wage right now is not a living wage. How are people supposed to be able to live if we are literally not giving them enough money to live, let alone have money left over to put away to maybe at some point purchase a home? That's not in the cards the way that we have them set up right now, because that deck is stacked. So, so many of these things are multifaceted, causal issues that we need to just do what we can, work with the administration, work with our peers on council, work with experts in the community to improve the possibility of adding more housing stock, but also what housing stock do we have already that's not being utilized? I'm cool with if somebody wants to have an owner-occupied Airbnb. I've stayed in places across the country where somebody lives in a home and they have a room, they have another spot in their house that they can rent. But what's happened is people are buying homes and they're taking them out of the market because they're using them as rental property for the short-term rentals. So by limiting that access, we would open up potentially houses that already exist. And we know that scarcity drives cost, so that could help kind of impact the cost of access for people to get home. So again, it's really hard to look at oh my gosh, there's so many problems. Oh my gosh, there's so many different solutions that we could choose from. It comes down to working as a team to make the best choices for the community. And that's what I'm think everybody in this room is probably united on.
Okay, Louis, you want to weigh in on this too?
Oh, I love this question. Okay, as president of Josana of CHNA, we built 94 homes, stadium estates, in an area that had over 7 football fields of open lots, from houses that were burned down, taken down, for whatever the reason might have been. The housing stock was horrible. Everything was contaminated because all of the big companies that were there damaged the soil. So it became very expensive, even just to break ground. It will cost you $100,000 just to break ground. Really, the Buy the Block program, I think it's a great program, but it shouldn't cost us that much money. You know, I just think it needs to work better. I don't know where the inflated number comes from. I try to look at the program. I support the program. It's just, why is it costing so much money to get it done? You know, with stadium estates, when we were putting up the 94 houses, sometimes we had to stop construction because RG&E couldn't get a crew there to plug up and do things and get the houses ready for power so they could do things. And I'm like, you know, I can tell you running back with Scott Benjamin and complaining to RG&E, hey, guys, what's going on? The construction team, Atlas Builders, all those guys were amazing. And the housing problem didn't just happen. It was happening before COVID. It was happening before. Everybody wants to blame COVID. Guess what? The wood did not catch COVID. Okay? You know, there was all kinds of barriers, and I know that's a big thing, but there's just a lot of stuff that goes into building a home and rebuilding a community. The thing is that no one stays consistent. People go, and as soon as they're told no, they walk away from a program, or they walk away from a neighborhood, they walk away from a community. People have to stick up for their communities, and the city has to hear them out. And I'm going to tell you, I was blessed in the sense that Mayor Richards came to Josana all the time to come in and talk to us and tell us how he could help us. Carlos Carbalata, when he was mayor, even before he was mayor, when he was on the team doing business development, amazing partner. The net offices were amazing partners in that era. So, you know, Lovely Warren came in and did amazing things with us too, and just said, it's amazing that you guys have united this community. Okay, that community was called Ghost Town for a reason. You know, high shootings, homicides, and everything else. It's not even called Ghost Town anymore. But that comes from engagement. And you know, people could say a lot of stories, and they could say, we're going to fund a lot of money. But you know what? You can put as much money as you want in there. But once that well dries, now you put them back at ground zero.
We got to take our only break. We're going to come right back with Victor Sanchez, Kelly Cheatle, Louis Aponte, who are 3 of the 15 candidates for Rochester City Council. And we want to remind you that early voting starts on June 14th, runs through the 22nd, and Election Day, primary Election Day, is Tuesday, June 24th, 3 weeks from tomorrow, if you can believe it. We're coming right back on Connections.
Support for your public radio station comes from our members and from Bob Johnson Auto Group, proud supporter of Connections with Evan Dawson. Believing an informed public makes for a stronger community. BobJohnsonAutoGroup.com.
This is Connections. I'm Evan Dawson. So earlier this hour, the candidates were talking about a bid, a business improvement district. And I'm going to start with Victor Sanchez on this one. If you're on Rochester City Council, would you support a bid in the future?
You know, I'm not sure right now. I need to have a better understanding of what the bid is intended to do. I do believe we need some sort of entity in the downtown to help activate downtown. I was part of the committee that established the management entity for the Rock the Riverway, and at that time it was a different process and a different area of interest that they were looking to activate, and that this entity was going to manage. So I think we need something. I agree that maybe the bid is not the best option and the best way to go, but I would want to learn what is the best approach.
So when you say we need something to do, you use the word activate. Tell me more about what you mean by that.
So an entity that's going to have events, we have a lot of draw to downtown when it's Jazz Fest or Fringe Fest, but something that could help activate it year round, have more of those even smaller events happening that is really in it for the interest of the businesses. So helping to market businesses, helping to draw, which is, in speaking with many of the other bids in like New York City, for example, I know that's one of the things that they do. So I agree with maybe the bid is not the best approach as far as like increasing rent in a really high rent area that we have, but whether it be RDDC is increasing the role or having a different nonprofit that's going to help in that space.
And is rent, is that the primary issue that you might get hung up on with the bid, or is it something else?
Rent, and also making sure that the businesses, especially the small businesses that are in the area, have a say in the policies and structure of the entity itself.
Okay, Kelly Cheatle.
And just repeat the question for me.
You're a big fan of the bid. Kelly's website includes information about how you were at the forefront of the movement against the bid, which ultimately was successful. So in the future, if you're on city council, is there any form of a bid that you would support?
We have to be very specific because, if you're talking about, do I want to see things happening downtown? Absolutely. That's why we had our balloon adventure downtown that drew 40,000 people down there. That's why I continue to advocate for arts and having events and having things like the Fringe Festival. That's programming. But a bid is a specific policy that is designed to take power and control from the community and put it into the hands of a small council of landlords. Like, we have a structure in the community where the people vote for representatives, and those representatives, which we're all hoping to be one, are accountable to the community. A bid is structured so that property owners make decisions on how millions of dollars in funding is spent to benefit their businesses. They're not talking about supporting small businesses. They don't even see the small businesses that are there that are trying to survive and who can't because the rent is, quote unquote, too damn high. So again, it's not about a specific named policy. It's about what is it that we need to do as a community to drive more folks downtown, to drive community engagement. And that comes from people having time and people having money in their pockets. And the people I'm talking about are the general community, not just a small group of 10 people.
So when you say it's the property owners who would have the vote,
Mm-hmm.
which often means the small business owner who doesn't own the property might be excluded.
Correct.
But tell me the harm that you see when property owners are voting, because they might argue, look, a thriving downtown is good for my property. It's good for business. It's good for everybody. And we're going to try to construct a bid in that fashion.
I think communities thrive when they have access to the resources they need to survive and thrive. And right now, people are not surviving and they are not thriving. And that's why you don't see people downtown. If someone's working 3 jobs in order to keep a roof over their head, how do they have time to support the restaurant down the street? How do they have time to go to see a play downtown? They don't, because there is a certain sector of our community that is hoovering up all of our assets and keeping it from being shared. So, when life is more livable for everybody that lives here, you will see a thriving downtown. So we need to work on things that improve our wages. We need to provide, we even have opportunities for people to get good paying jobs, union-backed jobs, in support of our care crisis. So we don't have enough CNAs. We don't have, Luis, you could probably speak for hours about the needs in the health industry, construction industry. There are jobs that are out there that are waiting for people to go after. That includes paid training. So how do we, instead of focusing this economic development on a pie in the sky aspirational constituency that doesn't live here, why don't we focus on the people that live here, make sure that they have what they need, make sure that they can grow and they can thrive, and then everybody will be doing good. Because I'm sorry, flowers don't chase bees. We focus on what it takes for our people to bloom, and business will be like running to us to come and move here because they see how great it is to live here in Rochester. And that's what I want to see.
Louis Aponte, would you support a bid if you're on council in the future?
Number one, we need to stop saying downtown. We don't have a downtown. Okay? We have housing, and we have empty buildings and empty storefronts. That's what the area that used to be downtown when Midtown was there, all day Sunday, record theater, McCurdy, everything that you could think of that makes it a downtown. We don't have a downtown. So to me, we talk about a bid and we talk about business development and where we said we need to save money. How do we pay for these other things? The city of Rochester has a business development team. People with degrees to figure this kind of stuff out. Why are we going to create something new when the people that are in those jobs now should be thinking of those things? We don't have a downtown. We don't have, small businesses. We're willing to do anything we can to bring big business and give them all kinds of tax breaks and everything else to bring them into the city of Rochester. But we're not willing to do that for the people that are here, that have weathered the storms, that have weathered even COVID, that have weathered the destruction of small businesses due to safety. People don't want to come downtown. But downtown doesn't exist because what they're going to come there, unless they live there, they're not coming there. Like you said when we first got here, I've been a DJ for 40 years in the city.
I'm Poder, by the way.
I'm Poder, by the way. That's right, 97.1. And ooh, I love doing that. I'm a wedding DJ. And I do all those types of things. And let me tell you, we're not having weddings downtown. Okay? Where we used to have them all the time. Holiday Inn, State Street, Main Street, the Hyatt, all kinds of stuff. And why? Public safety. Okay? So to me, I support our city pushing their people that have these big titles, that have take-home cars, to go and create what we need to do downtown, because we don't have a downtown anymore.
So let me extend on that. By the way, Louis brings it as a DJ. And
yes, I appreciate you. I appreciate you. Thank you very much.
That's not a political statement. So do you think this city needs more police? Do you think the city should have fewer police? The mayor talks about 100 positions still trying to fill, that they're trying to aggressively recruit and fill those positions. What does the city need in terms of a police force, Louis?
Okay. Number one, I have a son that's a police officer in the city of Buffalo, where they have no shortages. They're down a few officers due to injuries and retirements. I was at every budget hearing last week, and we're actually down 120 police officers, not 100, per the mayor's budget. There has to be a reason for that. Why are police officers transitioning out of RPD and going to the Monroe County Sheriff's Department? Why are they going to other county departments? I think there's a culture issue. Okay, right now the city budget, I think, is $115 million for Rochester Police Department. I guarantee that most of that is overtime. Okay, we're driving our officers into the ground.
But what's the culture issue?
I think the culture issue is that we went through a long period of time where our police department did not represent and did not look like the people that were policing. Okay, and I can tell you as a person who lives in a city and I'm everywhere, I have seen violations and people want to make it right away into a race issue. And we don't have a white cop problem. We have a cop problem. And you could never say, because that's not fair to the 99% of the rest of the police officers. I have great friends, longtime friends, that are police officers in the Rochester Police Department. And I love them. I care about them and their families. But is that 1% or even 0.5% that endanger them, which have also caused the community to turn their back on the police department? And not until we admit that we have a problem are we going to be able to move that forward.
So you want to address that, but do you want to hire more police in the future?
I think we need to hire the 120 police officers that were down.
Okay. Because
the community, I'm all for social workers doing what they have to do. I don't think a police officer should be tied up on a dog barking complaint. But I also believe that the people want the police. Because if someone's breaking into my home, I'm not going to say send a counselor quick. You know, I'm going to say send the police. And they can't come. I know that another candidate said that the police don't come to calls. I doubt that very highly. They're probably not coming in the 5 or 10 minutes that they used to come due to shortages, but they're definitely coming. So, you know, I think if we're going to talk about things, we need to be as honest as possible and there's never anyone to back up stories like that. It's always, well, I heard, someone told me that. That's not true.
All right, let me get your the other panelists on. Kelly Cheatle?
I think we need to ask what really keeps us safe. And I think, you know, most calls don't require a badge. They require care. And, you know, and actually, Luis, so you know, there are calls that are being made that aren't getting responded to. But the majority of calls that go into 911 do not require an armed officer. So as we're looking at, you know, if we have to look at this holistically again. What are the needs and how do we best need them or meet them? In Pittsburgh in the 1960s, some people might be familiar with Freedom House Ambulance Service. It used to be that when you had an emergency and needed to get to the hospital, the folks that would take you to the hospital, it was either a funeral home or you'd call the paddy wagon. And they might not even come to you, especially if you were in a black neighborhood. So what happened was folks got together and they were like, our people are dying. What do we do? They created the first ambulance service where they trained people in EMT services to provide life-saving support to get people to the hospital to get them the care that they needed. And it turned out it was a better solution. And so now what do we have? We have emergency response. So I think we can look at what are the needs in our community. You know, if someone has their window smashed, which I've had done several times, people aren't coming out to take a report anymore. If people have a need for mental health services, that's not something that is best served by a police officer. They don't even want to go on those calls. So, like, how do we best meet those needs? Because intervening at the point of crisis is a very expensive way, and especially when we're paying overtime for a staff that is overworked is just a recipe for not meeting the needs of the community. So we need to address what those needs are, get the right care at the right time to the right folks.
Victor Sanchez.
Yeah, so I definitely agree that if somebody's calling the police officer because they have an emergency, we need them to respond. But we need to look at what sort of calls are they responding to. Who, like Kelly was saying, like who can respond to certain calls better. I know within my street and Savor streets of friends, there's folks that are struggling with mental health crises, and police show up on a regular basis, but we don't need police to respond to that. They're not putting anyone in danger. They are just having a tough time. So having the proper people respond to that call. We have police officers that are working as traffic mitigators, whether it be festivals or other times. Like we're in construction season. We have construction workers that are directing traffic at the moment. So do we really need a police officer to direct certain traffic at certain times? So really understanding what police is doing and do we have the right number for those emergency calls is going to be key. And I think my number one step that I would want to dig into is understanding that.
Okay, down to our last couple of minutes. So about 30 to 40 seconds apiece. If there is an appeal that the city of Rochester has made regarding the PAB on behalf of the PAB, which lost in court recently at the state Supreme Court level, and then now could lose investigatory power, not just disciplinary power, investigatory power. It's got a $3.6 million budget. If you're on council, do you want to keep the budget the same? Briefly, what do you want to do there?
Yeah, so I support the PAB. I think that we would need to examine the budget if they can't do everything that they're tasked to do, if they can't do all the work that the budget allocates for it, we should be look at reducing it. But we should look at what else can we do as city council to make sure that we have some of that investigative power or some discipline power that maybe is going to look a little bit different from the PAB.
Outside of the police department?
Outside of the police department, 100%.
Okay. Kelly Cheatle.
You know, part of city council's job is oversight, and the PAB is under city council. So I'm hoping that, when this goes into appeal, that they are restored with their investigative powers because, to me, they're an agent of council. They should be able to provide oversight to a city organization. And if not, I think we need to look at, when the contract comes up for renegotiation, making sure that, we can restore that oversight. Because right now, what happened a few weeks ago with officers aiding federal immigration enforcement on our people, I don't feel that there was an adequate response by the administration to dissuade someone from supporting ICE. And at the end of the day, I want to know that the folks that we've hired to protect and serve are protecting and serving our people. Make sure that those they're facing the right way.
Okay. Louis, final thoughts from you. Go ahead.
PAB, make it make sense. Okay, if it is ruled that they don't have those powers, how do we give them that kind of money? Do we want to have someone or a couple members to be an advisory, to look into a couple things and advise the city? That's one thing. But to keep a $3.6 million for people to do what? It has to make sense. And I think it's going to come on to what does it mean? What can they do? What can they not do? So I really feel that we can't make decisions until it makes sense.
And the appeal will probably tell us a lot. That's not going to get done anytime soon, probably months away. Thank you to the candidates who are in studio with us, part of this series of conversations. This is the third out of 5 with the 15 candidates for Rochester City Council. Victor Sanchez, votevictorsanchez.com. Thank you for being here.
Thank you for having me.
Kelly Cheatle, vote for Kelly, FOR, voteforkelly.com. Thank you for being here.
Thank you, Evan.
Louis Aponte, at Louis Aponte for City Council on various socials. Thank you for being here, Louis.
And they could call me at home. 298-1211. 585-298-1211. I will come to them.
Or call them at home.
That's right.
From all of us at Connections, thank you for being with us on our various platforms. We're seeing you back here tomorrow on member-supported public media.
This program is a production of WXXI Public Radio. The views expressed do not necessarily represent those of this station, its staff, management, or underwriters. The broadcast is meant for the private use of our audience. Any rebroadcast or use in another medium without expressed written consent of WXXI is strictly prohibited. Connections with Evan Dawson is available as a podcast. Just click on the Connections link at WXXInews.org.